Hello, my name is Britta Nyland, and I'm a student of the Web GIS course here at Hopkins. And this is my presentation on my final project, a Know Your Rights flyer campaign backed by GIS. So we'll go a little bit into the background of this study, as well as the flyer that's involved in the campaign. We'll talk about the geospatial analysis and the fieldwork that was necessary, as well as the applications that were created, a dashboard and an experience app. So a little bit about the background. In 2023, it was found that the United States is home to roughly 48 million immigrants, of which 45% identify as Latino or Hispanic, the majority having been born in Mexico. This growing diversity is reflected in the population of Baltimore, where the number of Hispanic residents have doubled from 2010 to 2023. Since January 20th, 2025, xenophobic messaging from the administration, as well as escalated operations in the U.S. Immigration and Custom Enforcement, also known as ICE, has resulted in increased anxiety in the immigrant community. To help combat this accelerating trend of ICE raids, a GIS-backed Know Your Rights flyer campaign was devised to spread awareness in the Baltimore neighborhoods where there is a greater than average percentage of Hispanic residents. And we'll take a look here at the flyer that was developed. And this was created alongside a anthropologist who speaks Spanish and has a background in immigration. And it basically goes through some of the different scenarios where people could expect to encounter ICE and what to do in each of those instances. It also links to a website that we created that provides additional details as well as resources to things like free legal aid. So the geospatial analysis portion started in ArcGIS Pro. I had collected data from Open Baltimore, a data warehouse hosted by the Baltimore City, as well as from the American Community Survey and from Google. Open Baltimore yielded the census tract boundaries for the state of Maryland, as well as locations for bus stops, which are relevant to this project because it was decided that bus stops would be the ideal location to post flyers due to their high foot traffic. The American Community Survey provided demographics on total population and numbers of Hispanic residents by census tract in Baltimore. And then Google was used to find addresses for Latin markets and different kinds of markets throughout Baltimore. So the pre-processing involved cleaning the data. For instance, the census tract data with Hispanic demographics had some missing data that was replaced with the number 0. I added some additional data, some percentages and total numbers from calculations I did. And I also cleaned up one of the columns to have just the census tract number, so it would be able to later be joined with another data set. I also performed some geocoding using the addresses I looked up on Google for Latin markets. I joined the data on Hispanic demographics with the census tract data in order to create a nice shape file. And I used the project, clip, and merge tools. The clip to clip the census tracts just to those of Baltimore City, the merge tool to merge the data set of Latin markets with bus stops so that all stops would be in one layer. And then I made sure all data layers were projected to the U.S. Maryland state spatial projection. And then as a result, I created a merged bus stop and market layer and a layer that showed the Hispanic population by census tract. I then published those layers using the Publish Web Layer tool so that it would appear in my content on ArcGIS Online. And from there, I was able to symbolize or customize symbology and pop-ups on the maps that I created. I used arcade expressions to yield specific values that I wanted reflected in the pop-ups. I also created a histogram to look at the distribution of populations. And I finally used the find by attributes and location tool to really hone in on my data points of interest. And I'll go into that each step a little bit further here. So I created a map using the census tract Hispanic demographic layer that I created previously, and I customized it based on the percentages of Hispanic residents in 2023, and I varied the transparency based on the overall total Hispanic population in each census tract. I used Arcade on this map to create a value that represented the Hispanic growth rate from 2020 to 2023. So I used Arcade here to create that, and you see on the right lower where that value appears in the pop-up. In this case, the census tract demonstrated a growth rate of 72%. I created a histogram using the data, the percentages of Hispanic residents across the census tract, to look at how it's distributed. And what I was really interested in was looking at what the average percentage was, and then what was one standard deviation. Here, one standard deviation above the mean was roughly 17%. And so I decided that the census tracts that I was going to be focusing on would be 17% Hispanic residents or higher. And that's just to really hone in on my targeted audience. I then used the Find Attributes and Location tool, and I used that in order to select the bus stops and markets that intersected with the census tracts where the Hispanic percentage was at least 17%. And that yielded a new layer. This layer has the underlying census tracts, the ones in light blue are the ones that are 17% or higher. The purple dots here represents all the different bus stops that are occurring throughout Baltimore. And then the layer with the light green pinpoints are the bus stops that fall specifically in the census tracted area. So that really highlights and shows where a majority of those stops fall. And you can see here they fall mostly to southeast of the city. And that's kind of where you do tend to see higher rates of Hispanic residents. The next step, once I had my stops identified, was to use field maps. And the way that I used that was within the map viewer, I configured a form with the variables of interest. I also added some new attributes that I thought would be useful to acquire when I was out in the field, including the date I posted the flyer, what version of the flyer, was the stop even still present? So you can see that form, or some of that form on the left. On the right shows what the app looks, and you see it zoomed in on one of the stops where it gives the option to update and edit the information as well as take photographs. So it was a really useful way of capturing the progress of the campaign as I went out into the field and posted flyers. As part of that field work, I also used the Navigator map. Here you see my first run, basically. I took a subselection of 20 of the potential spots and used the Plan Route tool in Map Viewer to get an optimized route. I then was able to open that route in the Navigator app, as you see here on the right, and you see how it shows the order in which the flyers should be encountered, and this app also gives step-by-step directions, so it's super helpful for kind of efficiently posting flyers and allocating your resources as efficiently as possible. So after I posted some flyers, I was able to use the data I entered into field maps and create a dashboard. And this dashboard combined a couple of different things. And you can see here the percentage of flyers posted out of the 310 potential locations. You see the flyer locations by category. Primarily, most are bus stops. You also see on the right the 20 most recent flyer postings, and it gives the location and the time and date. And I made this dashboard interactive so you could click on different points and it would trigger and filter other aspects in table to make it as user-friendly as possible. Lastly, I created an Experience Builder app, which I included the dashboard as well as the previous maps that I showed. And I also created a page that would be a little bit more interactive for users on the site. And that essentially allowed them to edit the locations of the potential flyer locations, also plan routes based on the locations, which would give optimized driving instructions. And then finally, I included a summarize within tool so that you could click different census tracts and get a summary of what potential spots are contained within that. So in conclusion, flyer campaigns are an effective method of mass messaging, and with the backing of geospatial analysis, they can be optimized by locating target audiences and allocating resources efficiently. For this campaign, Esri software was used to identify Baltimore census tracts with higher than average percentages of Hispanic residents, which in this case was the target audience. The tools in Map Viewer and ArcGIS Online made it easy to intersect these regions with the locations of bus stops and markets in order to pinpoint the most ideal locations for flyers. Esri's host of online applications, including field maps, navigators, dashboard, provided the necessary support to implement and track the progress of a small campaign like this. Lastly, the plan route tool in Map Viewer can even determine the best routes based on the number of vehicles and stops, which really helps ensure that resources are optimally utilized. So just some final thoughts. Nearly a year into the current administration, there really are no signs that the Department of Homeland Security plan to curb ISIS activities. And as these raids in Baltimore continue, immigrants are faced with daily anxieties about their safety and security. So the flyer and website described herein are really intended to help prepare residents should they encounter ICE and just give them more confidence in protecting themselves and protecting their rights as best as possible. Additional resources were also provided in instances that they or a loved one is detained. So it will be a work in progress. I'm planning on continuing to post flyers throughout the city and track analytics on my website to see, when there's spikes of foot traffic on my site and see if that corresponds with posting in certain areas of the city. And it's been a real pleasure to do this class and create this campaign. And I'm very grateful to have learned everything about WebGIS and put it to best use. So I thank you for your time. Here's my email address, and I've included the website of the site that is linked with the flyer in case you're interested in checking it out. Thank you so much.